So this is week 3, and I am continuing with my large drawing for Inktober, where I'm working with Faber Castell Pitt pens, both the brush pens and the fine liners, to draw one large drawing for Inktober, not using any prompts, just trying to draw every single day and trying to get it all finished in 1 month. Right now I'm working on the bottom half of the tree and trying to put in all the various twigs and branches and the base layer of ink that I will then enhance with India ink wash later. This is what I did today. So I worked a lot on this area. I finished up those branches, or the big parts of them anyway. And then I started putting in the darkest parts of the leaves. And so I kind of gave them some texture, but the more detailed texture is going to be done with a smaller pen. So this was me just kind of filling in spaces that were just mostly dark stuff with like a little bit of light that's going to shine through. And all of these areas that I'm filling in here, I'm going to cover with a fairly dark area of ink wash. And the areas that I'm leaving uncovered are going to have light shining through in the background. So they're still going to have leaves there, but I'm not going to want to put that dark ink wash on them. And I was trying to figure out like what order I needed to do that in, and thinking about it realistically, I think I'm just going to get lost in there if I don't do the dark areas like almost completely first and then go back into the other areas. Still thinking about that though. But, you know, my next step will be to start adding like actual detail to the leaves. And I know that is just gonna take a while. But I am probably gonna start doing it down here because I think this area is a little bit more forgiving. Because it is going to be a lot of dark ink going over what I do. So it's not, you're not going to notice every detail as much. So I'll have a little bit more room to kind of develop my technique before I go to the more exposed areas. It's going to be a little difficult to draw over the masking fluid in some spots. I think with the fine pens that might be a little bit more challenging. And there's a lot of masking fluid at the top. So I really want to be clear on what I'm doing before I start that process. So, yeah. But, you know, for like almost exactly halfway through the month, I feel like I'm in a good spot so far. So, and I am going to take a couple days off. Well, 1 day off? I don't know. Probably 1 day off this weekend because we're going to do a little camping. So, obviously I can't take this with me. And I don't think I'll have time to do it in the morning before we leave. So I think I'm just going to have to miss a day. It's the way it is. So I was taking pictures for Instagram. And I was kind of standing farther away and looking at what I did. There's totally an eye in there. Do you guys see it? I like cannot unsee it now. And it's like the coolest psychedelic thing. And I'm going to have to make sure to leave that and not mess it up. I'm going to have to figure out some way for that to stay because that is just cool. I love it. So I'm going to take several different sizes of these fine liners and play with them and see which ones make the most sense to use for different things. So in the bark, I was using a ton of this like 0.3 size. And that one looks like this. So it's not a super fine line. For them, it's labeled as the super fine, but it's not very fine, really. But then they have several smaller ones. Well, they have an extra small, and then they have an extra, extra small. And I have several of some of these, so that's why I keep picking up pens, trying to find it. So yeah, I'm going to play around with these. I think I'm obviously going to be using a combination, but there's probably 1 or 2 that I'll be using more than the others. And then, of course, I'm also going to pull in the regular size brush pen, small one, for a lot of this. And then the big brush pen I'll be using for any like larger areas, but it was mostly going to be used down here for this stuff. So just going to play around with this just a little bit. So let's see, this is the 0.3 size, so this is the super fine. So I've got this little area right here, and it's kind of hairy looking. Let's see. So I'm seeing already that I probably want to use the brush pen up into about here, and then use the little bristles. And actually, even these bristles, some of them are, they're kind of all different sizes in there, so I feel like I might even want more of a variety. And some of them are kind of more, I'll be wanting to kind of dig in more a little bit. This is a little bit more like the hashing that I did last Inktober, where I'm going to have to kind of do a lot of layers of it and kind of make varying degrees of black. If you watched my video that I did probably like a year and a half ago, where I took different types of paper and then played around with doing different drawings with it, I tried to figure out what kind of paper allowed me to do the kind of drawing that I like to do. See, this is what like the super fine line looks like. It's really small. This extra small is really, really thin. If you want like that super, super thin fine line that you can do like wispy little spider webs or something, this is it. But in that experiment with the sketchbooks, I figured out that this mixed media paper allowed me to have varying shades of black. And in the Bristol paper, really, you just get one shade of black. And it's just because this has, you know, it'll soak into the paper, and the paper itself has a texture. And so you can kind of create this build of ink. And India ink really does that nicely. It kind of creates this thickness that I really like. So, okay, I'm looking at this area, and yeah, I'm seeing that like, well, actually that kind of looks like what it looks like in there. Maybe I'll leave that part. Just do a little bit of extra black like right here. See, that's interesting now. Okay. So I hadn't really played around with the varying degrees of black when I was initially doing the sketches for this. Well, it looks like I'm going to be using that 0.3. I've used that a lot on this. I have a feeling I'm going to have to buy another one of these. I thought really for sure I'd be using a lot of these extra smalls and extra smalls. And not sure that's the case. Although maybe when I get farther up into the light and the branches aren't as thick, maybe. Like I feel like I could even pull out the 0.5 here, which is the fine tip. Might even work well for this, so. All right, well, we'll go into hyperlapse here, I think. So I feel like I spent ages on this section, but yeah, it seems like I didn't like do much, but man, it just took a really long time. It took a while for me to kind of like work out how I was going to do the different textures, and you can see there that I like purposefully left that eye in there without adding any of the extra details that go in it. And there's still plenty of time for me to go in and add more if I think it looks a little bit too obvious. But there's going to be like a medium tone of ink wash that goes over this whole area. So I think that leaving it more obvious and then having room to go in and make it less obvious is probably a better choice right now. So I still need to do like this area and these over here. Yeah, working my way through. But yeah, all these kind of like leafy, twiggy areas are all going to be slow. And, you know, it might seem like I'm going crazy doing like every little leaf and twig, but like I said, this area is going to have like ink wash over it partially. So it's really just kind of look more like texture in that part. It's kind of interesting though. They all kind of take on this kind of like hairy look. And there's this kind of instinctual way that I want to just make all these branches look like they're like dripping down or something. I don't even think about it when I'm doing it. It also has kind of like a stained glass thing to it too. It's kind of cool. Yeah, so I'm very tired, so I'm gonna go to bed. So yesterday I was having some fun problems with my computer. You know, like once a month my laptop likes to just totally crash and lie to me and tell me it needs to be recovered and all sorts of things. So I had my monthly, you know, laptop disaster yesterday, and it made me think, you know, I probably need to do a couple things to safeguard this file, because I've reached this point like halfway through where if I lost my file, I'd be pretty irritated. And it would not be fun to try and recreate that. So one thing that I've done before is that the original file that I worked with got pretty large because I had all these layers in it and all these things buried in there. And I didn't need to be working with the entire file anymore. So I flattened all the assets and then I copied them over to another file where I have the numbers just as one layer over here. And then I have an extra layer of color fill that I can add to kind of sharpen up the lines and numbers if I need to. And then I have just a flattened version of the image exported. So that way I have this file that I can work with that's a lot smaller, that's a lot less likely to slow down and overheat my computer so much. And also just another place that it's stored. But the other thing that I did, I decided to go ahead and print it out too. So I had to do it multiple times because it took a while to get it kind of figured out. So this version here is one that has very faint grid lines in it. And it's, you know, the color is not perfect. This is on printer paper. You know, I printed it using like Adobe PDF because trying to print from Photoshop is really annoying. So it will, though, give me an idea of what things are supposed to look like if for some reason I lose that file, or if I'm just having computer problems and I don't have like 30 minutes to play around with trying to get my computer to work. So it's kind of my plan B. It's also nice to just have this reference sitting here on the easel as well. Down here, this one was kind of funny. So when I printed it out, the printer just, I don't know what happened there, but that's hilarious. So that's probably just gonna go up on my fridge somewhere and I'll just laugh at it. For this one up in the corner, you can see that I made the grid lines much more visible. So that's the one that I'll be able to work with if I really am like just trying to figure out the placement of something. And at this point, it'll just be kind of shading or something like that. But it's just nice to actually have this as an option. So I just feel like it's always good to have kind of something backed up. I, of course, have my files backed up too, but I've just learned not to trust that. I've had like hard drives just fail and we just lost everything that was on it. So, and you know, sometimes the cloud services get hacked and weird things happen. So it's just always good to have options. So since I'm going camping this weekend and I'm going to be gone for at least one night, I am actually doing my drawing earlier in the day today so that I'm not staying up late because I have to get up early tomorrow. And that is tough for me to do. I'm just not with it earlier in the day. It's awful. And One thing I do find though is that when I work tired, I can be more creative sometimes. So I'm gonna try and just work with that, you know? I may not get, this is not a time to do like really precise work. This is a time to do kind of creative work. So we'll see if I get anything done. I'm trying. I don't know though. I'm drinking coffee and my body's just like not even reacting to it. So. It is Sunday and I'm back and I'm ready to get going again. And that means it is the 19th. And this is where I had made it to on the 17th, just so you can see. All of these areas in here, when you look at them, you know, this stuff in here doesn't really look like pine needles, I know. But I think it'll create the right kind of texture that I'm looking for when I put a dark layer of India ink wash over it. That's the goal. So like these tiny little holes, like this right here that you see, those are going to be not covered by the dark India ink wash, which is why I went in there and tried to actually make them look more like the pine needles do in the reference photo. But that's what's going on here. That's why like those kind of look more like actual big leaves and not like pine needles. That's what's going on. It's the effort is to make them have kind of a certain vibration and interest when they're nearly invisible under black ink. Seems like a lot of work, but I think it'll be worth it. So that's what's going on there. So my goal today is, I think I'm gonna keep just going up the tree. So this next section up here is a bunch of bigger pine needles that are showing in the foreground of the picture, probably coming from another tree, I think. And those are going to be, when I was doing, I actually did do a section that contained those when I was practicing, and I was using a lot of the brush pen. Now, one thing I do run into with this brush pen, because this paper is kind of rough, or rougher than other papers, the brush pen nib does get kind of messed up after a while from working on this. I do have multiple brush pens. I can also flip the nib, which I have not tried. So you might see me doing that. It doesn't seem to be a problem with the big brush pen. I really only noticed that I run into that with the little one. It just seems to kind of like be just coarse enough, and like that that smaller brush nib is a little bit more firm. And the firmness makes it really useful, but I think it also just kind of like gives it a lot of opportunity to get kind of damaged. So it's almost like, it's like you're drawing on sandpaper almost, but this paper isn't that rough, but it's just rough enough. So yeah, so I might go through more, you know, several of those. But here's what's interesting though. So the micron pens, those tips are kind of easily chewed up also, but the fine tips of all of these Faber Castell fine liners are pretty hardy. So you just have to play around with all these different brands. They're just definitely not the same. I'm back to do some more experimenting here. I'm going to replicate what I see at the bottom of the tree as far as the foliage is concerned. I'm going to try and figure out what order I'm going to do the ink wash in and how I'm going to deal with some parts of this being like backlit and other parts not being backlit. So I'm just going to experiment around a little bit here, try and figure it out. Okay, so that's that first layer, because nothing behind that stuff at the bottom is white. So it's all at least a diluted layer of ink wash. So I'm gonna do that first, let that dry. So I'll go work on the actual drawing for a minute and then come back and do this next part. Okay, this is dry now. So now what I'm gonna do is put a mid-tone ink wash on the darker areas. All right, let that dry and I'll come back. I think I might have to do like another darker layer, but it's hard to tell sometimes when it's drying like this. Okay, that layer dried, so now I'm going to put some more pen in there. Part of what I wanted to see is if the pen looked different on top of the ink wash or underneath it. Doesn't seem to, so that's a good sign. I could probably kind of do things in various orders and it wouldn't matter. So that's what I wanted to know. I've had some types of ink and some types of like sometimes when you paint watercolor over ink, some of them kind of add like some pigment on top that kind of make things look different. So you have to be careful about that. All right, now I'm going to add another layer of darker ink in some spots. So this is the almost pure ink with just a little bit of liquid in it, a little bit of water in it. So in the picture, the bottom area is completely black, and I'm Not sure I'm going to make it completely black, but I may. I'm leaving myself room to play with that here. Do a little bit more in these areas too. Okay. I wanted to have that kind of bleeding effect on the edges. That's why I'm doing it like this. Not necessary to do it this way, and it doesn't always like really quite work either. I do find that India ink spreads really, really well, but you still have to kind of play with it, I think. So right now that looks black, but it won't when it dries. It will be a little bit transparent still. And some of these areas where the ink is pooled a little bit, if I was worried about the pooling effect, I would go in and suck some of that out with a brush, but I don't mind there being like a little extra texture or something in there. The ink doesn't bloom nearly as much on this cotton paper as it does on cellulose paper, so not too concerned about it, but even if it's there, I think it would kind of just add something interesting. So we'll let that dry, go back and draw some more. We'll see what we think. I think that's going to work though. I think my idea is going to work, so. All right, I ended up just working on this whole bottom part. I kind of was like, once I started doing all this, I was like, I might as well just finish it. So, so this area, I'm going to use that same technique that I was demonstrating on my little notepad, where I'm going to take medium to darker tone ink wash and put it over all of this kind of stuff. And then once I've done that darker part, then I'll go in and work on the lighter parts. So it looks like absolute chaos right now, but you can kind of start to imagine what it's really going to look like when that part's done, and it won't be nearly as nutty. And so the whole point of me putting in a lot of texture right now is so there is kind of like this underlying texture underneath there, but it'll be a little bit more, you know, a little bit less chaotic looking when it's covered up partially. So, yeah, it looks like a lot of chaos right now though. Whew. This is one of those places where you have to just keep with it. You have to just believe that it's going to end up how you imagine, and just be determined that it's going to happen, and, you know, there's no other option. So I will zoom out a little bit here so you can see what we have so far. So, and as you can see, I haven't done any of the other stuff up here. But that stuff's all going to be a little different, so I just kind of want to do like things together first. Well, I did not realize how late it was. So, that's where I got today with it. You can see I did all sorts of bristles and leaves and whatnot. All of that was very detailed, took a while. It's always one of those things where I'm like, did I do anything? I know I did, but like, you know, it's all just fussy. So I will continue on that tomorrow. And yeah, I can see all this part is going to take a while. Okay, that's what I did today. Looks like chaos right now, because I still have to add ink over all of this. So this part was interesting. A lot of little details in there, a lot of kind of interesting stuff, a lot of spiderwebby looking things. Those were kind of fun to do. And I'm still working on this part over here. So I'm just going to kind of creep my way up this tree, mostly because it's I'm going to have to move the easel to go higher up. So I kind of want to get both sides of the tree that I can reach comfortably while sitting done before I go and move it. Yeah, so I'm going to do all of the pen work basically, or the main parts of it anyway, first. And then I'm going to do a very light layer of ink wash. Then I'm going to take off the masking fluid, and then I'm going to do a lot of the other things. It's going to be interesting. So I will zoom out. So this is what it looks like at the end of week 3. it's something. It's there. It's happening. So I'll do a sweep across here so you can see it up close. But yeah, I feel like it's getting there.